everyone. We are really excited to welcome you to the AIHEC Health webinar. My name is Maggie Grandin, and I am the Health Initiatives Coordinator with AIHEC. Welcome to those who this is your first webinar session. Welcome, and we hope you return. We do have these almost every week, but certainly bi-weekly or at least once a month, maybe later on. And for those who are returning, welcome. We appreciate the continued support of our health webinar series. So we're really excited to introduce to you today Marsha Small. Martha Small is a Northern Cheyenne woman who embraces the Tsistsistas way, she's going to correct me on that, of knowing, especially those of respect, reciprocity, and responsibility. She grew up on the Northern Cheyenne Reservation and plans on returning there part-time when her academic journey is over. In her academic journey, she navigates the revitalization of multidimensional epistemologies of Indigenous worldview. In correlation with Indigenous knowledge foundations, Marsha employs Western methods of geophysical systems, specifically surrounding penetrating radar and magnetometry. Within all methods, she applies herself as an Indigenous researcher who is a voice for the children who remain in Indian boarding school cemeteries. In 2005, she graduated from Chief Dull Knife College, located on the Northern Cheyenne Reservation in Lame Deer, Montana. In 2019, she received her Bachelor of Science in Environmental Studies and Social Policy at Southern Oregon University, located in Ashland, Oregon. In summer of 2015, she graduated with her Master's of Arts in Native American Studies and her college teaching certificate at Montana State University, Bozeman, Montana. She recently served as the Mark and Melody Tepala Distinguished Visiting Professor at Willamette University, academic year 2019-2020. She is currently pursuing her doctorate in the Individual Interdisciplinary Program at Montana State University. Her foci are Native American Studies, Earth Sciences, Anthropology, and Community Health Development. So a huge thank you and welcome to Marsha Small.
Hello. Pervasive. No, Ota'taveenova'e, not the Tsistsistas. I'm learning my language now, and so still learning. What I said is I'm called Blue Tipi Woman, or Blue Wings, as my grandfather called me, and I'm Cheyenne. I'm Northern Cheyenne. I apologize kind of for the long introduction, but you'll see even longer one on my PowerPoint that I'm going to get ready to, or that I'm going to share with you. I really had a hard time deciding what to present here because of the multiple foci that I have. I've been in the Department of Native American Studies, Anthropology, Archaeology, Geophysical, Earth Sciences, Community Health Development, and I really had a hard time. I didn't really quite know what my audience or who my audience would be, and I was like, oh my God, if it's all Indian country, I'm gonna die, because we have such a responsibility to each other, to state facts truthfully, to live truthfully, and to be in that truth at all times. And for me, sometimes I get a little humor on, even in the most macabre instances or frames, and somebody will be telling me about the death of their grandma, and then I'll be associating with something else in my mind, some other moment that I had with their grandma or something, and I'll giggle, and they're like in horror, right? But we've been taught that laugh. We've been taught that how to face trauma, stoic fight or flight responses, and this is who we are as Native people. So when I was like, well, what should I present? And then I looked at the mission statement of AIHEC, and I was like, okay, it's mostly for TCUs. It's mostly for college tribal students. Well, then we need to, as faculty, as staff, as community members, as graduate research assistants, graduate teaching assistants, as responsible people, we need to probably should learn how to really navigate that. And I thought, well, how do I do that? And I thought, well, just tell your story, tell your truth. And so I'm going to share with you a PowerPoint that I put together. It's not about specifically my data, because if I shared my data with you, I have to rewrite it, redo it, as required as part of the doctoral limitations and we have here at Montana State University. And if you're looking for that, then you have to wait till I publish. After that, you can have it all. But I didn't want to rewrite. I didn't want to go resurvey because they're so darn expensive, on geez, who has the time right now, right? So I'm going to start sharing with you my PowerPoint, and if I can find it here. And if you have any questions, please leave them in the chat. We'll go from there. Let me see if I can open this. There we go. All righty, can we see that?
Yep, we can see it.
Okay, let's start from the beginning. Put Maggie up there. So I use the word rematriation. I don't use the word repatriation. As an Indigenous, non-traditional, somewhat traditional scholar, I am frankly very tired of the patriarchal system in which we live. And you'll see that kind of pop out throughout this presentation. We'll start with, the value systems of how I've been navigating this, the methodology a bit, and then I'll show you a few slides about the work I do. And at the end of it, there are a couple slides in there I'd like you to take note of that has to do with my work. I have asked people, or I have asked Maggie not to, ask Maggie to edit them out. So if you would not copy them or picture them, because I am going to eventually use them in publication somewhere in my life. I thank you for that. So rematriating core value is the recognition of sacredness and sovereignty in Indigenous research while journeying through the hallowed halls on that way to the Ivory Tower. That's loaded, isn't it? I should probably say thank you to everybody for being here too, tolerating my madness. But here we go. This is my introduction. I do this as a responsibility to my ancestors, to my relatives, to my community. Initially, when I first started this journey, my committee, 2 members on my committee did not want me to put this at the beginning. One of them outright said, no, that does not belong there. This is, that it's really a scientific paper and it doesn't belong in this paper. And I popped my head on it, because I want to graduate someday. But I also know that I have a responsibility to my ancestors, to you, to state who I am. And so it's kind of long. And I thought, well, if you really, if we had more time, I would read the whole thing to you. And then I thought, no, you're backlogging there, Marsh. You need to read it. And so I'm going to go through this, and there's some of the languages I'm still having difficulty with. So bear with me. My Cheyenne name is Ota'taveenova'e. It means blue Tipi woman or blue wings. My grandfather on my mom's side named me. His Cheyenne name is Hohuknut, meaning stone. American name is Martin Roundstone Sr. He was a Northern Cheyenne ceremonial man whose epistemological foundation is based on the cultural integrities of the Northern Cheyenne, meaning he not only practiced the old-time ways, but he lived them. My grandmother was named Mohana, gathering stand woman. American name is Mary Grasshopper, who herself followed the old ways of Northern Cheyenne. My mother was Bosta, white buffalo calf woman. American name is Victoria Roundstone. Both my mother and my grandmother have been instrumental to me as stewards of the Northern Cheyenne epistemologies and axiological structures. My mother named my daughter after my grandmother, Mohana. American name is Amber Jackson. My grandson is called, and this is where I have a hard one. And nuts. I can't say it correctly, and I will learn how to be better at this, I promise. Or walks at night. American name is Caleb Jackson. His name means he can walk through the night many days. I've been told several other things on this too, so but that's the one I'm going to own or steward. I named him from the previous 7th generation of males on the Hook site. As an older Northern Cheyenne student in an American research institution, I utilize Indigenous ways and Western tools. Holding true to the Northern Cheyenne axiological structure as a keeper of the old ways. And as a scholar in the academy, I utilize non-invasive, non-disturbing Western instruments which reflect and respect the Northern Cheyenne epistemologies, specifically that children are sacred. My relatives are products of Indian boarding schools on reservation and off reservation. My father is Clinton Small. He attended reservation Indian boarding school at Busby, Montana on the Northern Cheyenne Reservation. He was a well-known horse trainer and a rodeo champion in the Montana and is in the Montana Cowboy Hall of Fame. He comes from Long Line Ranchers. He still rode horses and gathered cows at the age of 90. He's from a family of 10 brothers and 3 sisters, with 2 sisters dying in early childhood. His surviving sister, Josephine, attended Chemawa Indian Boarding School, as did several of his older brothers. My grandfather, my dad's side, is Thomas Small, one of the last cowboys to bring cow herd into Montana. He had married to 2 women, Josephine Rondo, the mother of all his children, who died at the age of 42, who, by the way, knew 3 languages. Much later in life, he married Julia Cooley. For the most part, my family survived the Indian boarding schools. I am an intergenerational product of the Indian boarding schools. I have an innate connection. So I would like to say that it's long, but you'll see why this needs to be done. I don't want to just say Indigenous students. I want to say all people, all students, all scholars, in fact, all people. Let me move this down here. So I've been working with the 4 R's in my life for the past, well, for a long time, really, because you kind of have it structured into your foundation from a child, to be seen and not heard, kind of the boarding school mantra back in the day, be seen and not heard. But in that, there's respect, there's responsibility, relevance, there's reciprocity. Nobody likes to be interrupted, right? When they're telling a good story. But I use these, and I use them almost to the best of my heart every day. Sometimes I get a little irritated people and I bite their heads off, but not intentional. I still have hidden angers. I'm working through them too. But using these models will work for you, especially as you are in in spaces that that excuse me, in spaces where you are maybe perhaps the only native in the room, or perhaps where your study is not widely accepted. So using these 4 models, these epistemologies, they will help you. I guarantee you they've helped me immensely. And I don't get to go forward. Okay. So to start off with, and this is how I wanted to do it, because I wanted to include enough for the students, the tribal scholars, because I thought I would have them in here. I don't know if I have many, if we have many, but I wanted to emphasize that, because I get so many calls, emails from people going, well, how did you do that? How do I do that? And I actually teach a retreat, a workshop on Indigenous science and methodologies. And I said, well, for me, I do multiple I do multiple foci. I at the head of this, at the apex of this, I'm always thinking, what would my ancestors do? How do I do this? Well, once in a while, I'll come to a hard stop and then I just start over. But every time I look to my ancestors and I ask them every time. Oh, great. Well, let me go next either. This gets fun because it's hard. So epistemologies are your ways of knowing. Your axiological structure is your way of doing. Your ontology is your way of being. I don't know if I had a hard time with them when I first started. I had to fight my way through that because these were fancy words for me. But in doing this academic journey, I realized that terminology, we have to get to know that too. We have to improve our structures, right? We don't want to really embed them because we've been doing that for 500 years or more, but we want to learn association. And that's what the crux of this whole presentation is, association. So for me, when I started this, I floundered. I talked to people all over. I don't know if I had that, if that's right side or not. Let me do the pictures. Yeah, that is. Okay, so for people to, as faculty that are here, then you garner you structure your students to learn who they are. And then for me, when I teach the Indigenous retreats, the first thing I do is I ask scholars, how many people in here know their language? How many people know their ancestral lineage? How many people, I ask multiple questions of associativeness, of relationality. And for me, I started reading everything about the Cheyenne people, mostly written by non-native authors. But too, I went to my elders, I listened to them, I would just sit and listen. I can remember as a child sitting there and listening to their laughter. They spoke Cheyenne, but I did not know Cheyenne. I know parts of it, but I don't know Cheyenne. And that is part of the boarding school legacy, because that's what that was, right? Assimilation, cut off your hair, don't speak your language, get beaten for doing so. The atrocities committed there are horrific, but let's start with the language. I started learning the language once I knew that I could not write this research, this narrative, this sharing of knowledge, this providing knowledge without knowing my language, without being able to associate words, terminology into it. That it was pivotal into what we had to do. So I asked daily, what my ancestors would do. And there's ancestors I feel like I have talked to so much that they're probably tired of listening to me. My incessant questions, my incessant doubts. Because I daily have imposter syndrome. You'll get that a lot. I do. I have those insecurities, I guess. If they're insecurities or if they're just like innate epigenetic stressors, the on top of the cell memories. We all have them, as most Indian boarding school people, families do. And I don't believe there's many of us that don't have Indian boarding school trauma. I know that people have said I don't have any trauma, or I don't have any, my legacies are not tied to Indian boarding schools. And man, I want to talk to them at length, because it's been my understanding that the agents, the mustats, right? That's what my grandmother would say. Would the boogeyman would come and get you. For me, in mustats, when she goes, shh, mustats, or be quiet, mustat are coming. And for us, it was the Indian agents coming to get the children to go to Indian boarding school. And I would race to her, and she wore these ankle length dresses, these mid-ankle dresses, and I would pull up her dress and I'd hide underneath it because I didn't want the mustat to get me. But that was our boogeyman. the Indian agent coming to get you from school or for school. Back there. Putting language in your research, right, is critical. But also too, it's your core identity, because it tells the space of where you're at. It will tell the space of where your students are at. Once you get them to relate that to you, or if you're in Native Nations, you know that. But bringing it to the surface as a foundational element to research and to structure is critical. I can't say that enough. Just teaching the words, but teaching how those words associate to the spatial environment. Yeah, that's going to help scholars, that help you. Everyone, how to wrap your heads around where you are. I don't care if you're German, if you're Polish, if you're Scottish, know your ancestors, know your ancestral lineage, know who you are, know how you came to that space. Also, since I'm not a writer. I'm a half-time speaker. But in this, I write the best of my abilities, right? But getting published requires having articles after articles, just spit them out, just one after another, like a playing deck of cards. I'm like, I don't have that. I can talk from here to doomsday, though. I think they gave publications out for that. Well, I'd probably have quite a few. But I couldn't, right? And so what I did is I out-strategized. I started strategizing how to get the word out about my work, how to do this, right? How to do this, how to tell everybody about the atrocities in these Indian boarding schools. It was, wow, I can't get published. So what do I do? So I started talking to everybody. And then I started telling them about my work, and what I did and what I wanted to do. And I was beyond curious, beyond, it just drove me every day, it just drove me. I wanted to tell everybody about it because I was looking for remedy. I wanted remedy, right? I wanted remedy to the horrific traumas that are happening in our communities today. And I don't know if you know, but Montana has held one of the top 3 spaces for suicide, 18 to 35, in the United States for the last 40 years. And when you think that Montana, that in our nation and in our community, in our state, that the Native nations comprise 7% of the population, you have to wrap your head around that too and wonder why. And I think giving these foundational elements to people to let them know that they're not alone, that research will help heal. I think that might move it forward. And in that, you have to tell your story. You have to tell your narrative to as many people as you can. So get every conference, invite people to dinner, but get your word out there. Mm-hmm. So there's over 400 boarding schools, Indian boarding schools in the United States. This is from the Department of Interior. I know Denise Lajamore went basically pretty much across the United States to look for others too. And I'm dying to see her data too, or dying to see her data. But these are what the Department of the Interior has. And they're on reservation and off reservation. Off reservation is 23. I would like to survey those 23. I've got a couple done, but I would like to do the rest, of at least be part of that survey team. I have written, I myself, Dr. Farina McKean, Dr. Preston McBride have wrote protocols. And these protocols have to do, it's kind of a template for tribes as they conduct their surveys within their communities. And we did that because I saw the handwriting on the wall, and the Secretary of Interior that blasted out or started her journey, her healing journey across the United States. But too, when Kamloops came out with their over 200. And we know those numbers are climbing, and we know the numbers in the United States are not the 53 that they have in the DOI, the Deputy Secretary, Brian Newland's report, which I think they say there was only 53 burials, but we know there's a lot more, thousands upon thousands in these cemeteries. And you always have to question yourself, why are there cemeteries outside these Indian boarding schools? Ooh, right? Well, we know because the voice of the native is invisible. And that started way back with the Marsha trilogy. I'm always telling people, if you want to really know and how to do this, go back to the Marsha trilogy, read that through. But two, how it created the invisibility of the Native American. How it has essentially given us no voice, and that we've had to fight for every crumb. And that's basically what we do. We fight for every crumb. So these Indian boarding schools, and we all know this. Most people know this. They were, to kill the Indian, save the man. We also know I did not see because I'm standing here before you, but two, in most of the interviews I did for the Indian boarding schools, and I had people tell me that the Indian boarding schools were the greatest thing that ever happened to them, made them strong, made them stronger. And at first I got really irate, because I've done so much research on this and the atrocities, and I've been in these cemeteries from dawn until dusk, day after day, and I've seen and heard things that probably won't fit the Western ideology, Western frameworks. So at the end of these interviews, the question I always asked was, well, do you know your language? And not one of them knew it. And I know that's probably not going to fit Indian country on the reservation, Indian boarding schools. I know a lot of the Indian boarding schools on reservations. Still, most people there talk their language. In that, though, there's spaces in there of hiddenness, of refusal to admit that the Indian boarding schools were atrocious, that were horrific, and that our people went through unimaginable hells. And as a result of that, those epigenetic stressors, they are still experiencing them today. We are still experiencing them today at exponential levels. The communities aren't healing by themselves. They're trying like hard, but it's just like a small percentage. But I see where people are going, and I commend that. I think that's amazing. But for Deb Hallen's healing journey to go across the United States, and I'll probably get in trouble for this, but people I've been talking to all know this is like, okay, because I am part of that narrative. We are opening up these communities. We're peeling off that Band-Aid. We're exposing the raw wounds, and then trying to reattach through Band-Aid as we leave, or what? Where does the healing go? I mean, what's next, right? So I know that they have a suicide line now established, but I know that in the beginning they did not. And I wondered how, what else we didn't have. What else don't we have? Well, what we don't have, as far as I can see, is we don't have monies to do the program development that is severely needed for mental health trauma and physical traumas in our communities, and that should be primary. I get asked that quite a bit by journalists. What do you think's next? And I'm like, get us some funding. And they're like, well, how does that happen? And well, they pass the policy, pass a law, and without that being done, I don't see much funding coming on the pike. In fact, as far as I can tell, once that Secretary Hallen leaves, I'm pretty much fearful, but that this just goes to the side. I hope it don't. I hope it blasts wide open with the next one too. This is me doing my thing. This is the 250 antenna. The antenna is varying strength. Where am I at? Okay, the antenna is varying strength. This year, the 250 it's pretty good too, the 6 foot depth, but it goes deeper. It has it can provide good intensity, I guess. I guess you would say. Good imagery up to that. 1,000 is the larger the antenna, the shallower it can go, but with less intensity. A more blurry vision, if you will. But I use the 400, the 500, the 250 to 300 of various softwares. I have done multiple surveys and multiple cemeteries using various instruments and various seasons. And that was my goal, was to create kind of a guide, a roadmap for tribes to use in their lands, their soils. I wrote about soils. I'm writing about soils. What's kind of how the soils are, how the antenna works through the soils, how the machines work, how the instruments work in these soils, because that is primary. How it works during seasons, real wet or real dry, because not everybody has the optimum time frameworks. This is Dr. Jerry Burks. He is an Ohio Valley archaeologist. I work with him in OVI on multiple projects to do with Indian boarding schools and cemeteries. And I recommend using at least 2 instruments, at least 2, because what one misses, the other one may get. And I'll be able to show you an example of that here in a bit, or next slide here. I used to always, actually, I still tease Jared about being short. And that's why his data is so good, is so he's so short and so close to the ground. So here is a perfect map. And this here is the beaver board map on the left. And you can see how nice and beautiful rectangular system it has. A real nice map, right? A cemetery map, and nice and lined up. You think these are all here, you can see the McAuliffe kids over here, or not the McAuliffe, the Tarrant kids over here. That's them right here. But you look at this, you see 4, and these here red dots are markers. And these are the dates of the markers that we could find. And you look over here and you go 1, 2, 3. Oops, where's 4 at? Well, we have a marker there, but it's not there, right? What happened for this cemetery is that the people that went in there raised the headstones. And I don't know how it happened, if they lost the map or what, but they lost the transfer of data was not accurate. In this cemetery, there's duplicate markers, I think at least twice. And you'll see in the next slide that kind of what I'm talking about. But in this slide and down here, or what I wanted to show, is that a lot of these markers, they kind of match up. You see, some of them just don't have anything there, no signature, no reflection. And there's something really important in this slide. I want people to really look at this, and you'll see how, these are kind of the newer graves here. This is I think the magnetometry signatures. We done resistivity in here. We done reconductivity. We done magnetometry, ground penetrating radar, various antenna, but really pulled all the instruments they could in, and the markers are done on the GTX, RTK, system, GPS system, which nails it right within the centimeter, right? So there's still 2 kids under the tree, and I'll tell you a little story about them real quick, and I won't take long. But these 2 kids are from one family. They're from one of Chimawa's engineers, faculty, or not faculty, but maintenance engineers, I believe it was. But these 2 kids both died from drowning, and a couple years apart, but they were like, I think 10 years apart in age, 12 years apart in age, but they both died from drowning. And I think eventually the father from this here died from drowning too. So it's just a lot of strange stuff. I mean, just a lot of different stuff, not strange, but different stuff that is related with the cemeteries as we read the narratives of these people in the cemeteries. This here is where the Lumni Nation brought in their totem pole. They shared the magic, their healing journey with the students of Chamel, with Chamel people with the cemetery. This here right here is the newer people. Deep Pixley, the Select's chairwoman for multiple decades for her nation. She says that she's going to be buried here too. You can't be buried in Chamel if you don't have a previous connection with Chamel. But this is where she wants to go to rest, is right here. But if you see that, those markers are just like they vary in her. And I probably was moving my locator, but you also see what the magnetometry or the GPR picked up that the magnetometry probably did. Again, notice in here what is different. And as we move to the next slide, you'll see. Maybe I didn't include it. Okay, so right here, you'll see all this whole line of markers with no burials, no anomalies, right? Somebody's child, nobody there. So there's a whole line of markers, and even if I were to move all the data over or the left or right, I would still come up short. I would still be offline. So we're wondering, that when they put that back in there, apparently what they did is they just threw out a grid pattern and threw the markers in there. But as it stands right now, there are no bodies underneath these markers. So their map is off too. So this is something to deal with. One of the atrocities that you deal with in the cemeteries is that oftentimes although the cemeteries are really well, cemetery maps may have been done well, the transfer of the data has error, high error. Okay, so I'm moving real fast here. I'm going to quit in 4 minutes here, so I have a little bit of time for questions. And here's some questions, maybe some leads, if you don't have any. I want to kind of talk about the IRB for a little minute. IRBs per institution they should be situated, especially on native homelands, I asked recently for IRBs from several tribes in Montana, and several tribes did not have them. 2 actually, but others had them, but that was kind of like an executive decree. Others pointed me toward the tribal college, but as a nation, as a tribal nation, each nation should have an institutional review board, and that's it's just the name of the ways, because you have people coming in and taking research, and writing their name to it, and the tribe never benefits, right? Where am I at? So if we don't step to our game here, if we don't start this healing journey and quit the interpretive paradox of the colonial system, then we're just adding another brick to the ivory tower. We need to move away from that paradigm, that silo paradigm, and provide paradigms of our peoples, our ways of knowing, our ways of doing, our ways of being for our peoples. We can't afford not to. We can't afford to be invisible no more. We must bring our visibility of us to the surface now. And I think during working with the Indian boarding school systems and the atrocities there is our beginning point. And the reason I think that is because even today, it's having a hard time going through the legal structure to get recognition. So we're still invisible. And with that comes that social miasma, the political, the economic, the social, even the spiritual disparities in what is today. There's no equity. I threw this in there because I could. So this is how I get the word out about other people. Today I'm advocating for bed peas, and he's an advocate for him because we did a Mountain Time Arts presentation with Yellowstone Park a couple weeks ago, and he had me put my handprint on one of the teepees because it was a water teepee, and I've been working with the water, spirit of the water, for a decade and a half, possibly all my life, because I've always been a river rat or a mud puppy, right? I'm always at the creek or always at the river. And what he does, what our focus there, foci there, is education through art. So we're always using these different elements. And this is the reason I'm sharing this with you. And not only because I can, and I want to get other people's word out, is because education through art, nobody would really think like that. They have to really push, how to, because the learning, the way they have taught us, the paradigm that is taught us, the model that they have given, shows just a siloed avenue of dress, right? This colonial structure. So if there's a way to get your word out, however you do it, through art, through your research journey, get the word out. I'm really thankful for you. Thankful for everybody, for each and every one of you, that you're here. But two, then I know that you'll take maybe some part of this that could be you can utilize, that can be useful for you to teach your students or you scholars. You can use it for how to navigate your research journey, your academia. But two, with the 4 R's, just in your general life, to make the world a better place. It's not going to hurt. It's definitely a remedy. Thank you. I don't know how to stop share. There it is.
All right, Marsha, thank you so much. That was just a wonderful presentation, extremely informative. We're so grateful to you for joining us and presenting to us. I do want to open it up for questions now, and I saw one in the chat, so let me just get back there. So Marsha, the question in the chat is, what are some of the databases that you put your name into to get more ancestral knowledge and information?
What are some of the databases? Data, tomato, tomato. NARA, I went to NARA. Demographics. It's really hard because the church don't let you into very many of their databases, but Monarch, I think, is one of them. If you're working with Indian boarding schools, if you want to get more involved in that. But NARA out of DC, Washington, peruse those. And the church, when I did a cemetery, that didn't want me to use their data because they said those children were prayed over by God-fearing Christian folk every day, that they didn't need any other remedy. They didn't need to be found. They need to be left in rest. And I'm like, okay. But I asked the Sisters of Providence, could I have your map? I know you must have a map because you dug up your clergy. You dug up your papas and your mamas and your sisters in there, and you moved them to a different cemetery. So this was after that community, that church was sued. And of course, the church, when they get sued, they go bankrupt. This is oftentimes not, they don't have the money for that church to pay out. But I know the Catholic Church is probably the second richest institution in the world. I really question their strategy and why they're so reluctant to help heal. But the church, if you can get in the church data archives, that'd be primary. Did I answer your question?
That was a question from Maria. Did that answer your question? I would think so.
Where did I put my name to the data?
Yeah, it was, what are some of the databases that you put your name into to get more knowledge and info about your ancestral
yeah,
lineage?
definitely NARA, National Archives, Archives. in various places. And I think the one in Seattle I use the most, but I have hopes to go to DC. But that's where I would try. There's one that is on, I think somewhere on one of my social media, the Facebook one. There is a site on it that I think it talks specifically to Genoa. If you're trying to find your ancestral lineage, who your people were then, and you might know their name, go to that school specifically and look up, ask that school specifically where you might find your ancestor.
Great. Thank you for that answer. Do we have any other questions? And feel free, you can of course put them in the chat still, but you can also just unmute yourself and ask.
I'd like to say that, there's a lot of people on board now, and, there are tribes trying to do their surveys. And they did Genoa recently, or no, they did one in Nebraska, but the state archaeologist is the one that requested it, the research or the survey to be done, and they said they never found any, no sign of any graves. And I'm like, well, you probably need somebody more than a native to walk with you, because as far as I can tell, you just had somebody open it up with a prayer and then had them sit under a tree. Oftentimes these people, these students, our people, our ancestors that are buried, sometimes they just don't want to be found. But if there's a native there, more than likely they would open that door a little bit better than they would for non-native just to cruise by there. Mm-hmm. You must think like that. That natives that were put or died in these systems, they might not recognize or want to be recognized. They might just want to remain unknown too. But there are places in our structures, in our methodologies, native to Western, that are very different, and you have to embrace them. And for this one, the state archaeologist requested the survey, never found any sign of graves, and put a dot on it. And I think that having a native there and having the native look at the cemetery or where the places of burial possibly might be better. We have a knack. We have a mad skill set.
So Marsha, we have another question in the chat. Recently, St. Labra announced they were planning to assess the cemeteries at their school properties. This might be a first. Do you think self-assessment of their cemeteries will also be self-serving?
Hey, read it again.
Sure. So recently, St. Labra announced they were planning to assess the cemeteries at their school properties. This might be a first. Do you think self-assessment of their cemeteries will also be self-serving?
I got that from Red Cloud. The community says, well, geez, now what if they just buy her off, because I did a excavation there. It can be self-serving, definitely. We'd like to think that the people during the survey or the research are not self-serving, but if you have a lot of volunteers and they're all church-ridden, I'd question that too. There's in Yakima, they recently did one of their surveys for their cemeteries, and I was like, who's your volunteers? I want to know who your volunteers are, and they haven't got back to me. But working with Red Cloud, one thing that I do know is that, and they haven't given me approval to do their cemetery. They want to put that off for a while, but they are interested in a possible mapping of the cemetery. That those survey people have integrity. That although the church might want to force words or deny things, they too have a culpability. Red Cloud, especially at this time, they're trying to step to that plate. They are trying really hard. As for being the first school in Montana to do a survey, as St. Labre wants to be, or the thing, I'm not sure that should even be questioned. Who starts first, who ends last? I just know it needs to be done. That all these cemeteries and the Indian boarding schools need to be done and done right, and probably church facilitated, maybe church, well, probably church paid, funded, but done with not necessarily church going surveyors related to that church. I really think that surveys have a huge integrity, but like I said, the state of Nebraska, Kansas, having the state archaeologists do that, it made me question a lot too.
So I have a question. Over the course of your research and investigation, have you found that there is more, people are becoming more receptive to you being there and doing this work, or are you finding that people are becoming less receptive? Like maybe, you know, you're an imposition or something.
Yeah, the community of Red Cloud didn't know what to do with me. I hired one of their community members to be an intern so they could be right there. That's the truth. One lady actually said I was doing it for the money, which was really hurtful. So we have a lot of oppression in these communities, because that's the colonial system, right? The crab walk, crab on a crab bucket, I guess. But I think having as many people in the community that are not related to that church have actual ongoing hatred for that church. Not going to say dislike, I'm going to say hatred. Actually, should be on those survey teams.
Yeah, thank you for that. All right. Any other questions? We have just a couple more minutes. So any other questions, again, feel free to pop into the chat your question or unmute yourself.
Oh, I just want to say, Yaledu and Chenangali, Marsha, for sharing your knowledge with us today. I currently serve as faculty at the university here in Alaska, and I was really comforted by your words today, especially as you talked about struggling with writing publications and battling that imposter syndrome that can be really hard to overcome sometimes. And as I'm kind of venturing into my career in academia, I struggle with that a lot. And I just was wondering, do you have any advice? I really appreciated what you had said about approaching your ancestors every day and asking for guidance every day. But do you have any other advice that you may be able to offer someone like me who's entering into this field of academia and research and feeling really intimidated?
Remember, you're a warrior. And you hold those truths. You hold them truths. You are them truths. Hold that fierceness. Know that that truth has to be told. And it has to be your narrative from you yourself. And that will help you get rid of the imposter syndrome. It grounds you in that. Stay grounded to your land, to your waters. Stay grounded to the very sky itself. But don't give up. Don't even entertain that thought. Know that every voice, your voice matters.
Amen.
Okay. Anything else? Questions, comments?
You have 2 minutes.
2 minutes. What is it now?
If you have any questions, I think you can find my email online. I'm always willing to chat, to share my journey, but too, I like to brainstorm with people. I like to brainstorm. So I like to just sit down, have tea, eat good food, and just brainstorm.
So Marsha, we do have one more question in the chat. Do you have any advice or suggestions for Native scholars who want to do work in this area, given it is such an emotional topic and can be emotionally taxing.
Absolutely. Stay grounded. Just to go home a lot. I mean, as much as you can, but work for a bit. Do your mental balance, mental health for me. Like I said, I don't know if you saw it, but I sit by the water a lot. Every day, almost every day, I have my little spots. I go sit by this bridge, and then I go up the road a bit and I sit by another bridge, and then I go sit by a waterfall. But I read somewhere some long time ago that water, because I'm, like I said, I'm a mud puppy, I'm a river rat, that water heals. I truly believe that. So I use that as part of that is it's as much as you work on the hard stuff, do that, you have to attend to your health, mental, physical, spiritual, emotional health, and the same factors. So as much time as you put into academy, take as much time for that balance.
Well, Marsha, thank you so much. And as she mentioned, she has contact information. You can always reach out to me to get contact information if you have more questions. But thank you to all of you for attending. We do have another webinar next week, so look out for information on that. Marsha Small, thank you. We are so appreciative of your time and effort. And take care, everyone.
Yeah, go sit by the water.
Go sit by the water. Thank you all. Have a good rest of your day.
Yep. Goosebumps to you.